Hello and welcome to this episode of The Inner Estate with your host, Bridget Stuart. And today my guest is Marco Gomez from New York City. Marco, thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you, Bridget. Appreciate you having me on.
And I have to tell you, Marco, our topic today is one that I think is so critical to so many people's success, and it's not talked about often enough, and that is the fear of failure. And how does the fear of failure impact your everyday decisions and how successful you may or may not be? So, Marco, can you share with everyone, what is the fear of failure? What does that mean to you when you think about that?
It's growing up, my family, I come from a family of immigrants, and so I'm first generation.
Uh-huh.
And I saw the struggles that my parents went through just to have us live in a great, in a good neighborhood, to have make sure we got our education. And my mom worked 2 or 3 jobs for most of her life. And so that really made a huge impact in my life. And it's like that imprint that it left. And so growing up, I was always like, hey, I want to make sure that I'm never in a position where I have to work all these jobs just to make ends meet, right? Not like to get ahead, not entrepreneurial, like, let me think of a new idea. Let me think about a new business. No, it was just, you know, th- they're just getting by. So I always
Right.
thought, you know what? I always want to make sure that I do what I want to do. And I want to make sure that I have enough that if I said, hey, you know what? I don't feel like working. I could do that, and my kids would never know what that's like what I went through. And listen, I'm very grateful for what my parents gave me, but coming when they're immigrants, you come here obviously for a better life. So
Right. Yeah. So that really, from a young age, this was imprinted in your mind, and it made you very driven to make sure that that's what you achieved for your family today.
100%. I mean, it resonated, throughout my life.
Hmm.
Yeah.
When so what was your first career? What was your very first career?
Yeah. So, going to school, when I was and I went to a local school, Queens College, part of the city, University of New York. And I was like, what do I want to do? Do I want to be a lawyer? For a while, I thought about becoming a law enforcement agent. So I was like, all right. Um, so I can never smoke. So I didn't,
Right.
smoke because I was like, hey, I want to get drug tested.
Right.
And I was in political science, and I said, you know what? The FBI is hiring accountants. So let me get an accounting degree. So I went and did that. Rather than applying to law enforcement, I ended up, one of my professors got me a job interview with Morgan Stanley, Dean Witter at the time,
Yes.
World Trade Center. And so I got the job, and I started working in finance at the World Trade Center. And from there, I spent the next decade working my way up. I was an associate director at UBS up in Stanford. I worked at JP Morgan. I was senior vice president at a Dutch bank. And then my last role was as a vice president at Bear Stearns Asset Management, working on the high grade and high grade two funds, which for those of you that have watched the Big Short, were the two funds at Bear that cratered the economy, you know.
Yes.
So that was my first career. You know, well,
How many years did that cover around?
uh, just about 11 years. Right out of
Okay.
school, first 11 years. So my 20s into my early 30s.
How did that come about, and how did that fear of failure impact that phase of what you were doing and the choices you made about what you were going to do next?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I had a fraternity brother who, a few years before the financial collapse, he was an attorney. He started a boutique real estate brokerage, and he reached out to myself, my wife, and a few other people and said, hey, look, I want to have people with a good pedigree, good resumes, and on my roster. Would you go get a real estate license? And I said, listen, I never plan on selling a house ever in my life.
Right.
I'm too good for that. I'm a finance exec.
Hmm.
But I did it. I said, all right, I'll help you out. So a few of us got our real estate license, and I never did anything with it from '06 until '08. And so when '08, when the financial collapse happened, I said, well, I have a real estate license. I had started already also focusing on real estate investing. which
Yes.
is not something that gets taught college or anywhere else for that matter.
Right.
Interestingly enough, a lot of the courses that I took were at the Learning Annex here in New York, or actually throughout the country, they had the Learning Annex. And for a while, actually, my first foray into entrepreneurialism was, well, let me try and sell booth space at the Learning Annex Trump Wealth Expo.
Wow.
So I sold, hey, listen, I think I spent about 40 hours and I made like 10 grand in commissions,
Yeah.
you know,
Booth
for
spaces.
space. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did learn a lot about real estate investing at the time, and just I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read a lot of books, and that really because I was preparing myself. So when that happened, I was like, well, now I have a backup plan,
Yes.
and I'm not gonna fail, and I don't care. I don't know if you know, but there weren't a lot of options for people at that time. Lehman Brothers was done, Bear Stearns was done. Merrill was taken over by Bank of America and all these other companies. So it's not like you could go out there and be like, you know what? Yeah, I'm looking for a 250, $300,000 a year job.
Yeah. Right. Which one will I choose from all the options in front of me? Yeah. No, that was not the time for that.
Yeah. Now I will say that I was very fortunate because a lot of people were pushed out the door like that Monday. I was one of the few fortunate ones because of what I worked on. They needed me to help transition everything over. So I got a pretty good package, and that helped kind of give me a soft landing and allow me to do something and figure out what it is I wanted to do. Whereas a lot of people just didn't have that option, and they had to scramble and figure out how they were going to pay their mortgage. I didn't have that situation, so I was very fortunate in that respect.
At the time, did you have any children yet?
No, at the time it was just my wife and I had gotten married the year before.
Right.
We had bought a house.
Right.
And I had actually come over to Bear Stearns. So I was only at Bear about 6 months. We had no kids, luckily, at that time, because I think that would have been really stressful at that point
Yes.
in
Yeah.
our life. So it was just like,
Yeah.
all right, it's the two of us. Worst comes to worst, we'll go rent a studio, sell the house. Well, actually, selling the house wouldn't have been an option. That
No,
would
that was
at
not.
the time it would have been really bad. Yeah, yeah. It was new construction, and you don't hear that term often in New York City and Long Island, new construction. So it was this huge development in
Hmm.
Queens and the Rockaway Peninsulas, and so yeah, it wasn't like if I would have turned around and sold it, I probably would have been in a whole another
Yeah, that would have been a bloodbath. Yeah, that would not have been pretty. So with all of that, because I feel as if uh, even though you had the good fortune that you got the soft landing and you were very essential, so you had that time, it wasn't the abrupt see you later, head out. Did that trigger any of your fear of failure or thinking about childhood? And did it impact that choice you made to go more entrepreneurial and less corporate? Did that play into saying like, okay, wait, I just made 10 grand selling in 40 hours. Maybe I need to check out selling things and owning more of my own business. Did that play into it?
Yeah. Well, there was a few things. I think one of the biggest, you know, I would say there was two events that happened that really were catalysts that pushed me in that direction. One of them was during 9/11. At that time, I was working across the street from the Trade Center where I had worked previously. I was at 130 Liberty Street. And after everything that happened, we were relocated to our disaster recovery site in Jersey. I mean, when you talk about busting your ass and getting up, systems
Yeah.
back up and running. And so we just went from the most horrific event I've ever gone through in my life because I was there,
Yes.
I was down
Right.
there and I was running. And
Yeah.
now you're working like, I mean, we worked a lot, but now you're talking about working like 90 hours a week, living in a hotel, going through everything. And, there was like no gratitude. I think that year my bonus was like minimal because the market did really bad. And I just realized that we're all expendable in a corporation. There's
Yes.
no loyalty whatsoever. So that was like, I was young and I realized that wow. I was also wondering why like people in their middle age, like 40s, 50s, were not busting their ass like me. And I back then I was just like,
Mhm.
no, they're just lazy. Then,
Right, right.
now fast forward to that now I'm in that time, I'm like, no, they just knew better. They knew that they would do that and they could just get laid off. And I started seeing throughout the years subsequent to that event, people getting laid off and they would just come on the floor, like you've been there for 20 years and security's escorting you out. It's like, I was okay yesterday, but today I'm not.
Yeah, yeah.
Then when I was at another bank while in finance, I saw the people that had brought me over from a previous firm into that bank. It was a Dutch bank, Robeco. They were just pushed out one day. And, I was on the verge. I kind of worked out a good deal. But so I realized that, we can just keep playing this game, hopping from firm to firm to firm. And the older that you get, the more money that you make, someone that's younger right out of college is just going to come and take your job. So, yeah, I kind of spoke to my wife and I was like, that's when we started like really diving into learning about investing, learning about real estate, other businesses. And, listen, I failed a lot. I think my first business that I did while I was still working, besides the side hustle of selling the Trump Wealth Expo
Right.
space, was a franchise. It was a auto qual. It was a mobile detailing business for dealerships where they would go in and keep the cars on the lot fresh.
Nice. Right.
And I mean, it sounded great, did everything. I think we invested about 140 grand into it. And um, what we didn't realize is that in New York, the dealerships are not as large as they are across the country.
Right.
Whereas a dealership in Arizona or, in
Mhm.
Texas is going to have
Or Kansas City. Right. Yeah,
thousands
huge.
of cars on the lot.
Right.
No, here they got like 80 to 100. And it was a little tough based on the cost and everything here. So that one didn't last more than a year and a half. But I learned a very valuable lesson in entrepreneurship. So, um, so it didn't deter me, but I learned a lot. I went back and said, okay, what went wrong? What do I need to do in the future to make sure this doesn't happen again? And so, yeah, I mean, really, those were the things that made me decide, like, hey, let's not stay in this industry
Right.
long term. So even before the financial collapse happened, I was like, yeah, I don't know if this is going to be where I'm going to be for 40 years and, retire. I was just, it's not going to happen.
Right. And even when you think about those people that were in their 40s and 50s that were, escorted by security out, I'm sure the majority of them picked up, started something else, became a consultant, or I'm sure they did something. However, I feel like when you want to make a huge change, and it's a little bit easier to do before you have your children and when you're younger and you had that clarity to do that then. I mean, there's pros and cons to each of that. Anyone listening, if you're in your 50s and you want to make a big change, do it. Reach out to me, I'll help you. But that it is a little easier prior to the kids and the other obligations and everything you're doing in life. So I think it's a gift that you had that clarity that young.
Oh, I agree with you, 1,000%. It's just, there was no panic. There was no like, oh my God, the kids' tuition is due. The
That's right.
other
Yeah.
activities, what do I have to cancel? Like, no more swimming for, this
Right,
week.
yeah, right, right.
Right.
Little
So,
Johnny can't
yeah.
play the flute anymore. Yeah,
That's it, your dreams of going to Juilliard are done, No,
yeah,
so none of that occurred. It was just like, all right, well, what am I gonna do now? What is gonna make sense? And because I had that cushion when I left Bear, it was like, let me try something and see what will work. Whereas a lot of people jump into something, right? And let's say they don't give you a call and they just, oh, I'm just gonna try something out. Like real estate agents are the biggest example of this.
yeah.
It's so easy to get licensed, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it's harder now, but it's still easy, right?
It's still easy, yes.
Hairdressers go through with a ringer compared to what we go through.
Correct. Yes, that is correct.
And they're doing it for like what, 40, $50 a cut, maybe $100 for blowout and whatever, right? For women. For guys, it's like in New York, it's like 25, $30 a haircut.
Right.
And I think that they jump into it and they don't have a plan. They
That's
don't
right.
know what's involved. They just think, oh, it's so easy, especially post COVID, right? Or post
Yeah,
financial collapse. It's like
yeah.
anyone
Well,
could
just
sell
do
a
that.
house, right?
And especially now it's everywhere on TV. That looks fun and easy.
Wait, I can make my own hours. I could have
That's
my
right.
own
That's right.
schedule, right? So I think that, those things, let people, it's a little misleading, right? Because anything that you do, yeah, if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a financial cushion, you're going to fail, you know?
Agreed.
You're going to fail forward right off the cliff because you're not going to be
That's
able to
right.
jump back on.
Right.
So I think that because I had that cushion, and listen, I'll be quite honest with you. When I first jumped into to become a real estate agent, I didn't really have a plan, and I
Yeah.
was just like most agents. I was just like, I showed up to the office. Back then, everyone went to the office. You had, days where you got up, and then
Yeah.
um, it was just like, oh, just come in here, just make some phone calls. Here's the white pages, white
Hmm.
pages then. And but there was no real plan. And then, I was very fortunate. I had someone that I met in the office, and he mentored me for a little bit and kind of showed me like, hey, build your CRM. Just
Yes.
call everyone in your CRM that's a lead at least once a month. Okay. So there was more guidance on that. So my first few years, I really stumbled, but again, I
Hmm.
didn't have to. Like I'm very like upfront about with people. I tell them, listen, my first year in real estate, I went from like my highest grossing year in finance to my
Right.
first year in real estate was $15,000. I
Yeah.
still
Like
have to
less than you
figure it out,
made in like odd jobs when you were a teenager.
you know.
Like it was, yeah.
Yeah, it was really tough. And I tell people that to show them that look, it's not easy, and I had no plan. That's the problem. I had no coach. I had no mentor at the time. I had no plan about how to do it. The office manager, listen, team leaders, office managers, they're all there to what? Recruit us, get us in the seat, and that's
That's
it.
right.
They're not there to,
They recruit and pray.
right,
Dear baby Jesus, 8 pounds, 6 ounces. Please
right.
let the people I brought in the office sell a house. Yeah.
And
That
at the
that
end,
was the model. Yeah.
and when I
And
joined, I think when I was
kind
in
of
that
still
firm,
is.
I mean, back then I was on a 50-50 split. So, hey, if I sold something
They
profitable,
were happy.
they're good, you know? Um,
And you know what I think ties into it too is, and this is on a broader scale, kind of, I think it contributes to the churn rate that we have in our industry, our chosen industry, is the licensing process does not teach you how to sell houses. They do not teach you how to procure, secure a client and sell or buy. I'm not, if anyone's listening that's not in our industry, they're probably going, what? What is she talking about? But it is true. So yeah, so you get out and then like you said, you show up to the office, they're like, there's the phone. Okay. And it's very minimal. Some things have changed a little bit since then, but it is, you have to have the plan.
yeah, I think for the most part, it's still the same thing, like you mentioned. I mean, it's like people don't understand that every state's licensing program is meant to just teach you how not to break any laws, how to
Correct.
treat the public fairly and honestly,
Correct. Which
and
is
not to
great. I
discriminate.
love all of that. Yeah.
100%. But it's not like it's kind of like college, right? Like we were talking about, like they don't teach you in college how to invest. They don't teach you in college about real estate.
Right.
There's college grads today. Like, why do they have adulting classes, right? They don't know how to use a
Yeah.
checkbook. Well, most people
Yeah.
don't even know how to use a checkbook these days. I think everything's online, but they don't know anything about banking. They don't know anything about Ks. Like for example, if you're going to build a business in your plan, it should be like, all right, if I'm going to have a family, all right, my kids need to become employees of my corporation. Oh, guess what? I need
Yes.
to become an S corp. You know,
Yes. Yes.
I need to set up my self-directed 401k where I could put up to like 60, almost 60 grand of my money in there and start
In there. Right.
growing. Right? I can invest in real estate with my K, with my IRA through self-directed vehicles. And so all these different things, like no one knows. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, but they're definitely not teaching us any of
They're
that
not teaching
in
that.
state licensure.
They're not even teaching the basics of how credit works. Either way, credit usage or credit scoring, like it's not, it just is not taught in our schools. When
Yeah,
my son
absolutely.
was still in school, I actually started a understanding money club. It had to be a club, and it was an after school club, and it was so much fun because we really did talk about some of those things. And it was really cool because some of the kids would go home and talk to their parents about it. So it was having a little ripple effect. If I was, I don't know, queen of the world, or if I
I mean,
was
Bridget,
a billionaire, that's something I would attempt to incorporate as a nationwide project. That would be one of my passions. You and I talked a little bit. Fear of failure is tied to your big why. And that is one of my kind of lurks in the background there of a big why of getting more opportunities for children, especially teens, to learn about money and how does it work and what could that ripple effect be from that. And back to what we're talking about, you're right. So you got into real estate. You didn't really have a plan. You had someone who gave you some guidance. You went from making your highest income to your lowest back to back years. Thank goodness you had the cushion, right? And so what was the next step after that? Like how did you progress from that to making it a viable income?
well, like I mentioned, so I was fortunate enough to meet someone that had been in the industry for 20 some odd years at that point. So I guess they had figured it out over time, right? Eventually, like you will figure it out over time, but no reason to make it painful, right? Get a coach,
Correct.
get a mentor. But,
Right.
so they kind of explained everything to me, and then I was like, okay. So my first step was like, all right, I'm gonna get a CRM. What do I go with? Top producer.
Top producer. That's right. I was a big top producer
Yeah.
girl.
So I had top producer. I set it all up. I mean, fortunately, when I worked in finance, I also ran a technology team within one of the firms I was at, Deutsche Bank. So I was no stranger to technology and
That's
running
right.
around systems, which is an advantage that I had at the time. So I started getting organized and I started just trying to meet as many people as possible. I started attending a lot of wedding shows and just where I could get names, right? Meet people. And again, remember when I started doing this, it's not like people really were selling house or trading up. I mean, it was like I cut my teeth on short sales,
Yes,
REO.
you did.
Um,
The
actually it's a
dreaded loan modifications.
lot of loan mods, you know. So I really learned real estate,
Yes,
and but I was able to connect with people. And like I said, slowly but surely over time. And then I moved firms and then I started getting more education. The firm I was at Douglas Elliman here in New York. At the time, it was Prudential Douglas Elliman. I was part of the Prudential brand when that firm franchise, I guess, was around. And yeah, from there, I went to Keller Williams. And I would say at Keller Williams, where I spent a little bit over a decade, I learned a lot. I definitely learned a lot. There was a lot of education. I think there was extremely a lot. It was just like over. It was like it was like from going to a leak in a hose where you like
mhm,
sprinkled on you to all of a sudden it's like
right,
a faucet was open. So I think it was a little
right.
more too much, and it can be overbearing for a lot of agents, overwhelming, I should say, for a lot of agents. But I did learn a lot about the industry, and you started learning from people like Ben Kinney, and who I think is a genius in real estate.
Yes.
And I'll be remiss if I didn't say that I have a good friend of mine, Karen Kleinman in Bergen County, who her Ben Kinney story is that he was a cable installer. She still has the receipt when she lived in Seattle that Ben Kinney installed her cable. All right.
Oh, that's so funny.
When you're watching this, all right, I shouted you out. You got it.
That's right.
And Ben, every time he sees her on the Zoom, he's like, "Hey, Karen." You got a guy who's like close to being a billionaire, and he's like, "Hey, Karen,
Yeah.
how are you?"
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, you learn from people like that, and you just you just start learning a lot more. And then obviously you get exposed to coaching, and I think that that was one of the first times that I realized that, hey, coaching is important. You do need to have someone there. And look, you can be a very smart individual, but sometimes you just need a sounding board. And you're not just going to go to
Yes.
an agent who doesn't know or is not doing better than you. Hey, I'm thinking about this. Sounds great.
What do you think? Right.
Right. So, and I think that that's really, very important. So when you start having all of that, and then you could really start building a business. I mean, look, you hear about Mark Cuban and, all these other, billionaires that, and they have people they go to. Why do corporations have boards, right? The board is there
That's
to
right.
act as the coach. Like, hey, I
That's
was like,
right.
you can't do this. This is not a good direction to go. Bring the company in. Um,
Right.
so having all that, I think, when you start establishing all that, it helps you create, a career, a business. And look, I think even to this day, I constantly fail forward. I mean, it's just like you scale up and you have a lot of agents, and then it's like the market turns and they're all like, oh my God. Yeah, it's like, oh, great.
And then they're gone. Yeah.
It's like a
There's a
roller
lot
coaster.
of it's one of the things I think that because how many years now have you been, would you consider yourself sort of full time in the real estate industry?
Oh, jeez.
18 years?
No, it's, yeah, coming on 18 years.
18 years, yeah. I've been 27. I actually think that what you just mentioned, I think it's part of what makes our industry so appealing and a career that you can be in for decades because the change is constant. So, although the work itself is the same, right? Your clients keep changing, the colleagues keep changing, what is working in response to the market keeps changing. So if you're learning based and you are willing to put in the work and the time to learn how to adapt and you become very nimble so you can pivot quickly, it's an engaging career that you could stay in for a long time. The analogy I use a lot is we are like emergency room doctors, then a family practice. We're emergency room doctors that also have a family practice because the relationships we build with so many of our repeat and past clients. But that energy of all right, who needs to buy what? Who needs to sell what? How are they going to do it?
Right.
What do we need to cure before they're able? Like how are we? So it's got that energy, and if you're
Yeah.
really in it, it can be a great career for decades.
I mean, I don't know if I'd go with emergency room doctor. Sometimes I feel like I'm like in the military and I'm in the field and I'm like freaking, triaging as we
Yes,
go,
yeah,
especially lately. It's like, at least in the emergency
yeah.
room, it's kind of calm. It's nice. I feel like I'm out there and like triaging and it's like everyone's fighting and you're trying to like, all right, let me patch this up. Let me patch that up. And that's New
Well,
York real estate,
Yeah,
and,
I was gonna say you are in New York
yeah,
City, so that would mean, yeah, you're a little bit more like a trauma level, those special hospitals with the trauma. But it does allow people, anyone who maybe in our chosen industry, because I'm sure the people that are in sales are just entrepreneurs, maybe listening to us as well. Do everything in your power to make it through the first 2 years. If you make it through the first 2 years and you actually get your feet under you, you're going to you could set yourself up for a very intriguing and exciting and profitable career. That I want to jump back to what you said about the coaches. So how many I came from a corporate background as well and plunged myself, went into my Century 21 in Southern Maryland, where everyone dressed very well because this was the late 90s. But I was still in my corporate suits, went in there and quickly realized that the successful agents that were there had different language than I did, and they had a different approach. Now, hear me clearly, very successful. Some of them to this day, I still think about in terms of what am I doing with my client experiences. So huge impact on me. But I knew within a month, I was like, wait, no one else is making a business plan for 1999. No one has a target number. The one lady who I think kind of did was an introvert, right? So within a month, I was like, where's the in case of emergency break glass? And by sheer luck, I went into the office one day to my desk in the bullpen, and there was a Mike Ferry event flyer on my desk that the front desk lady had just gone and put one on everyone's desk.
right,
And so I got my license November 98, February 99. I was in Crystal City, Virginia at a productivity school taught by Mr. Matthew Ferry and Mr. Tom Ferry. So how lucky, knowing what we know now, how lucky was I that
I
I
mean, yeah, you're very
stumbled into that 3 months after getting my license. And from my corporate background, which I was with AT&T, amazing training, right? So I was used to like world-class level training. And right away I was like, yes, they are speaking my language. So barely 3 months into my career, I signed up for a coach, and I have had 1 to 3 coaches ever since. And that's not including anything I might do for physicality or training. And it has, by the way, is my life perfect? No. Do I still fail forward all of the time? Yes. However, am I proud of what I've built? Absolutely. And that was a huge part of it. So how many years in were you when you hired your first coach?
It was, I'm ashamed to say that it was a long time. So I've been almost 18 years in the business. So it was about, I would say about a decade. So I waited a long time. And part of the reason why, and people should never make this mistake that I made, is, and I know better. What is the coach going to do for me?
That's right. Yeah.
That,
Right.
so I made that mistake. Now, did I have other people that I could go to? Yes. So did I have like kind of like a board? Yes, I had that,
Yes.
but I did not have a a coach to bounce ideas. So, my business. So I was very fortunate, right? When I left Prudential and I went over to Keller Williams, within 2 years, I happened to meet a woman named Linda DeFusco in
Yeah. Yeah.
Arizona, and she was building this whole ambassadors group,
Right.
which was people that were going to refer to each other. I was fortunate that she had called me and said, "Would you be interested in being my New York guy?" And I met a lot of people, and a good amount of them are still friends of mine that I speak to regularly. And so my business became extremely agent to agent referral based.
Yes.
So I think my reluctance to coaching was like, dude, my business is on autopilot. I can close 30 deals, 25 deals. I'm not spending money on marketing. I just pay out a referral fee. So it's a transaction based expense.
Correct.
And everything I was doing was my database was just nurturing real estate agents. Literally, that's what it became. So I think that was my reluctance to coaching. That's why I waited so long,
Hmm.
is because my business was kind of just humming along. And even before I met you, like the coaches that I had, I mean, we won't name names, but I was like, man, they were crappy coaches. That's like, it was tough. I mean, I had coaches that were like, all right, so what's your plan? What do you mean, what's my plan? Why don't you ask a few questions and then ask me, like, what's
Right.
the
Right.
plan? And then little prodding, kind of be like a shrink, like, ask me a few questions. So I bounced around a lot, and until one day, one of the partners, I was an investor in a market center, Al introduced
Hmm.
us. That's how I met you. But yeah, no, I just to say a lot of the coaches I had. For a while, I was also my training. You had the ferry organization.
Yeah. Right.
I took a lot of sweat hogs. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
so Ed Escobar at the time, I think, was the one running it, and every time I took the training, it was all the same. I still have the book, by the way. You know,
Hmm.
so I
It's
had
all great information.
it is. I mean, listen, a lot of it can be adapted to today, and I think a lot of these
Correct.
programs, training programs, the foundation is kind of the same. It's just
Correct.
how they tweak things. But so yeah, I mean, my advice to people on that would be: don't be thick-headed, don't be stubborn, don't wait a decade. Um, and look, you may not be able to afford a coach like Bridget right off the bat, right? But take the first step and do like group coaching.
Right. Do something.
Do something
Do
that, yeah.
something.
And
Yeah.
I think that that's where people should take that first step. Eventually, you want to have your own coach, but you have to do something, and don't go asking people in the office that are not selling houses what they you should do.
That's right. Yeah. If someone has time to spend 45 minutes by the coffee machine in the morning, maybe not.
Yeah, it's funny.
But
Like now, I have people now. They come to me. They're like, "Hey, listen, would you show me what to do?" And I'm like, if I had the time, I would love to. At the organization I'm at now, when I left KW, went over to EXP, it's just, obviously when people come in, like kind of like similar to what you're building a group, it's like, okay, now you're invested in these people, right?
right. Right.
And so I do help them. And now so I guess, what COVID did is, right, they catapulted these organizations, these virtual real estate agencies.
Yes.
Right. So now it's like, when you see it, when we were at our previous firm, it's like, oh no, this is the way to go. And
I
now when you
know.
compare, your earnings potential, it's like, I'm like, I can go on like a really nice vacation every month with what I make. And I have a lot of
Right.
agents in my organization that are from Canada, starting with
Hmm.
my buddy Kirby Chan. you realize that, hey, you want to invest your time in those people and help them grow, because by investing in them, you're investing in
You reap
yourself because
rewards.
right.
Correct. Yeah, it's phenomenal. And by the way, I think you and I are at two of the best of the cloud-based or virtual brokerages. You're at the XP, I'm at Real, and it just is. It has been. That's another thing that's reinvigorating. Yeah, when we talk about longevity in our industry, I feel I feel like I'm in my 30s again, and just ready to conquer. Which is I am a little older than you. This is refreshing at my age to have that invigoration and desire to go crush it again. So I want to, if it's okay, I want to loop all the way back to drumroll. What is she going to pick? That very first franchise opportunity you went into detailing the cars at the dealership lots.
Auto
And I
call.
believe you said that you invested 140,000 in it. You and your wife were doing it together?
We weren't even
Or
married
was
yet.
she
We
oh, you
weren't
weren't
even
married yet?
married yet. Yeah.
Okay.
I
Alright,
sold
so you
her.
weren't married
We
yet.
weren't even married. Luckily, she stuck around after the 140 grand loss.
Well, so that's what I'm going back to, because we were talking about that fear of failure, and I'm sure other people heard, like, "He lost $140,000."
Yeah.
Now, a couple of questions around that. When did you know to pull the plug? First question. Second question, how did you pick yourself up, especially knowing that you have that highly attuned fear of failure? And how did you pick yourself back up? And how long did it take you to be like, "That's all right, Marco. You just paid 140,000 for that lesson and I'm moving forward." Like, can you dive into that a little bit? Because a lot of people, I think, would lose 140 grand and that would be a hot stove that they wouldn't want to touch again.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't blame them. So a couple of things. Yes, I lost $140,000. Is it money that I was going to use today or at that time? No. Here's why. One of the many things I had learned prior to doing that was I can remember I was telling you I was bouncing from one firm to another in finance.
Yes.
So, and my wife had also moved firms. So when we did this, we had both left Deutsche Bank where we had met and we rolled over our 401ks, right? And at the time, since I was studying all this, I rolled it over into my own self-directed vehicle and showed it. So I think at the time it was dealing with Mark Chalice at Directed Equity out of Colorado. We're going back to 2005. I remember that corporation at the time that we had. So it was 2005 RDPD Inc. 2005 Rich Dad Poor Dad Inc. RDPD.
There we go.
Yeah. So, um, so it wasn't money like I took it out of my bank account and I saw 140 grand go. Yes, it was my money. Yes, it was my, at the time, girlfriend's money, now wife. But it was money that we weren't going to be touching for decades, right?
Right.
And so when we lost it, it was like that happened. I got over it probably, I would say in a few weeks. I was like, okay, where do we go from here? It took her a lot longer. It takes her a
Okay.
lot longer to get over things. Now she's
Actually,
like, I learned a
when's the
lot.
last time you checked in with her on it? It might still be brewing. No,
Yeah. You know what? I have.
I'm joking.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
believe me. But so it didn't take me that long to get, and again, the reason why is because it wasn't money that I could touch today. It wasn't like, oh man, I can't go out to dinner because I spent this. That
That's
money
right.
was money that I was not going to see for decades, and I'm a big proponent on younger people, especially now that they bounce around from firm to firm. Take a shot, take a stab in the dark and see what can happen. I mean, obviously think it out, but don't be
Right.
afraid to use that money because it's something that you're not going to touch for a while anyway. And you never know what would have happened. I mean, a few years later, the financial crisis happened. So if I would have invested all of that in Bear Stearns stock, like a lot of my colleagues,
Correct.
worthless anyway. So,
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
so that's why it wasn't, and we picked ourselves up pretty quickly.
One of the things that stood out to me when you were sharing that story is that you did an autopsy on it and you analyzed and realized the error that it wasn't the right fit for your market. So I think that probably made it make sense in a way where you were able to move on more quickly.
It
But
was,
that's
yeah,
my assumption. I
yeah.
don't,
Two take. I think my biggest takeaways when I went in and did the autopsy and were okay. Number one, we weren't in the right market for the business. That's number one.
that's right. Yeah.
Number two, I had hired family.
Oh,
Again,
yeah. You know how I feel about that.
yeah. Mistake number two. And then mistake number three, when you're getting into certain businesses, they lean more towards owner operator, right?
Yes.
And I was not the
Yes.
one doing it. So I wasn't the doer, right? I had a full-time job and I had other people, I had family members working in it. And look, they tried their best, but at the end of the day, they didn't know what they were just taking my guidance and they weren't
Right.
sellers, they weren't salespeople, right?
Right. Right.
They weren't um they weren't concerned, with certain aspects of it. So it's one of those things where, and again, listen, I was very appreciative of the fact that they helped out, but I also learned like if I were to do something like that again, it would be completely different. And even now, I mean, I've had other businesses since then, and I get approached just before this podcast. I was approached by someone and said, "Hey, look, you're really good at back end stuff. Would you take an ownership interest in my company?" And I'm like, probably not.
Right.
And even to this day, like sometimes you think you're going to find a really great partner and you're like, oh, this person's great. And they let you down.
Yeah.
It's happened to me recently. And then you got to pivot and now you got to find employees real quick unless you want to do the work.
That's right. Yes.
So it's
Or unless you want to fail and just have it not happen. Yeah.
right. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. It's
and,
hard.
and so I think that that's the biggest challenge is that, and you have to find, people. And when you're going to get into a business, it's like, okay, what is the downside? And we all have blinders, right? Like even recently, I had a business recently where it was going great, and then the person doing the work, they had issues with their spouse, and then it's like, oh, you know what, I can't do this anymore. So then it's like, all right, what's plan B? I mean, short term, you become the employee doing
Correct.
everything.
Correct.
Long term, it'll turn around, but it's so we even learn our lessons now. Even in my late 40s, right at
Absolutely.
50.
Right.
So it's just a constant challenge, but I mean, I was very thankful for the lessons I learned with the auto business. The cool thing is I had never visited Breckenridge before, so I was like, oh,
There you go. And you
really
went.
nice, yeah. And I had never driven cross country in a work van twice. So hey, listen,
Okay.
that was another experience. I got to see Nebraska, South Dakota, and
Cornfields.
I was like, wow, this is looks the same the whole state. I'm like, that's a lot of
That's
dirt.
right.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, there were a lot of lessons that I took away from that. One big one is obviously a lot of systems. One of the things with franchises is that the franchisee has to learn systems. This is how you do this, and this. And this goes back to your coaching, right? Like when you coach someone, things will get tweaked, but at the end of the day, everyone gets coached the same. Everyone's got to do the
Right.
same thing in an industry. It's not like, you know, I think the worst thing, and you and I have talked about this, is when someone goes, well, I think that I'm going to get all of my business by becoming a YouTube sensation.
Right.
It,
Right.
listen, eventually, maybe,
Right.
right? At the beginning of a business, I mean, you got to have your fundamentals, right? Like in real
Agreed.
estate, if you and I don't speak to people, I'm guaranteeing we're not going to have any
We're
transactions.
not we're not gonna sell houses. Correct.
So,
Yes.
you know, um, if you don't use professional photography, probably not going to sell your houses in this market.
Right.
And I see it all the time. I mean, it's one of the things I look at. And look, some people are really good. They are like hobbyists and they learn, DSLRs and all that. Yeah, that's fine.
Correct.
As long as you're using the right equipment, great. Like I just taught a class recently and the photographer hated me because I taught the class how to use virtual staging.
Yeah.
And it was like, that's the software I use. I'm like, yeah, but how much are they paying you per picture? He's like 50 to 100. I'm like, cost $20 a month.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, and I showed people how to use it like real time. So there's things you can learn, how to do floor plans. I could do a floor plan myself now, and I teach other agents how to do it in, I don't know,
Right.
15 minutes,
Right.
right? You scan and it does it for you. So there's a lot of tools, a lot of AI tools that are there now available for you.
Right.
And I think that kind of segues, like I built the business on AI as well. Like I
Yes.
realized AI is the way of the future. Like if I don't
Yeah.
care what industry you're in, if you're not embracing AI, you're going to get left behind. AI is not
Yes.
going to take over real estate agents,
No.
but you know,
It
if
can
you're not
enhance what you're
embracing it,
doing, increase your efficiency. It can improve client experience. You and I both are major proponents, and it's absolutely,
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because
it's
actually I was just looking and I actually, one of my clients here dropped off his paperwork on his contract that he signed yesterday. And that was an AI generated lead originally that
yeah,
replaced an ISA. I've had VAs for a long time. I have a VA business as well that I've had
right.
for a long time.
Yeah,
That one was a great one. My advice to everyone is if you have an assistant and you get them young and you them and they're coachable and they work the way you work, and eventually that'll be your best partner, especially if they're overseas, because you
absolutely.
change their life completely. Unlike my
Correct.
partner on that business, he watches the house like no other,
Mhm.
and his family, it just has benefited. I mean, he never thought he'd have the life he has now. Uh,
Right. It's amazing. Yeah, my virtual assistant has been with me almost 4 years.
mhm.
She is actually now the broadcast manager of the podcast as well. But yes, just such an amazing, it's an overused phrase, but it's such a win-win when you're able to find that. In fact, I need to follow up with you about ISA services if you still have that running because I have a need for that. And so I want to touch on one other thing tying back to fear of failure. So in the past year myself, it's going on almost a year and a half. A venture that I started out in has had several personnel failure, partner failure, and then regrouping from that and kind of getting a start, and then actually a huge provider that was part of what I was doing, total failure. And so just now, finally, after a little over a year, I think I'm right on the edge of getting back to kind of that momentum we started before a bunch of this stuff happened. When I think about the fear of failure, it would have been in the last year, because I'm sure there's other people, and this is outside of real estate. So there's other people that have probably been in this situation. And it's like you can get to the lowest low and think, man, that's a colossal failure. Or you can continue to say, is the timing right? Can I analyze this? Am I nervous about a huge provider failure again? Well, now it's been consistent for 9 months. I think it's good. If any of you are in a spot similar that you can relate to, don't give up, lean in, figure it out, assess if it's still viable, and still go for it. So I think sometimes, and I'd like your opinion, I think sometimes people just give up too soon.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's to your point, as long as it's not bleeding you dry, right?
Correct.
If
Right.
it's a business that has potential, is a viable business, there's a market need for it,
Yes.
then I think that you should consistently plug away. I think where it becomes an issue is when you're losing money every month.
Agreed. And we were
And
not in that situation,
right, and
right?
then it's
So
not
it was,
sustainable.
but
Right.
it was a limbo. And I don't like, well, humans don't like limbo. So, but you're exactly right. I guess that's what I was trying to think of is you've got to assess and figure out is now like you did with the franchise for the cars. You had clear writing of this is stopping now. And then how do you assess? No, I think this is actually just now after taking it's more like an elephant pregnancy to get it birthed. However, it's about ready to be born. Like, how do you assess that? But you are right. If you're bleeding or it's impacting your family or stop, right? And it is something that when you have a coach, you can do that type of analysis as well. So,
Yeah,
I've sought counsel on that. I've spoken to you about it primarily. So it's because I know you have that experience in assessing that. So it's very worthwhile. And it makes you feel better when you're not making decisions like that just out in the dark on your own.
yeah. I think that if you're trying to do it, out in the dark, it's tough. Like with the with the franchise business, I mean, one of the biggest things that impacted that business, obviously, it was we started building it out in 2005, really got going in 2006, and then we started going into 2007, right? So you saw what direction the economy was going in. So
Yes.
yeah, I mean, look, there was outside factors, outside economic pressures, and then the personnel. It was just so it was tough all around. So, but you have to assess everything and say, okay, we got to pull the plug.
Right.
And unfortunately, with a franchise business like with a McDonald's, right? If people stop going to the McDonald's, it's not like the individual operator, the rest, it can just go to McDonald's and say, you know what? Yeah, we don't have people coming in here. Yeah, it's we're not paying like the minimum fee, franchise
That's
fee to
right.
you. There's always a
Correct.
minimum.
Right.
Yeah, McDonald's will just shut you down, right? So that's the other thing. Whereas if you have your own business that you start from the ground up, you can also pause a lot of things and play like we've all learned in the past, red light, green light. Hey,
Yes.
let's start cutting back on expenses. Let's see where we got to reallocate. And I mean, we've done it in our real estate businesses. When times
Absolutely.
are great, I'm driving down the interstate and I'm looking at these billboards and I'm like, it's like, geez. And then it's like when times are lean, it's like, oh, geez, no more real estate agents here. Or the
Yeah.
ones that are doing it now, they feel like if they stop doing it, their
That's right.
business is just
Yes.
going to crater,
Yeah.
right? And um, so yeah,
Well, I think just now kind of bringing everyone up to speed with you today, one thing that stood out to me that I didn't know about you before, you do have multiple businesses, multiple income streams. And when you talked about your mom, I was like, you actually took the role model she gave you of the work ethic and working multiple jobs
yeah,
and having the multiple paychecks, I'm going to say yours at streams of income and semi-passive and all of that, some active, some semi-passive. But it just really touched me because I thought, I hope that she sees how the impact she had on you, which I'm not saying I'm sure your father also worked hard, but it's funny
yeah,
because
no, 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 absolutely,
you've taken that model they gave you, and which is, and I'm second generation. I'm the granddaughter of Irish immigrants. You took that dream they had of coming to America for the better life, and I'm sure they're remarkably proud of you because you took the work ethic and the having multiple streams, but you took it, as you said, now you're creating generational wealth. So they came and they made it happen. They stuck the flag in the ground, staked the claim, and then started and made it happen. And you've taken it to this whole new level.
yeah, no, no, I definitely think that that definitely had a huge impact. The other thing too is working in an industry like finance and financial services and Wall Street. It's you realize that if you put all your eggs in one basket, it's so to get to your point, like now it's I own real estate, I own buildings, and I own them in states that are landlord friendly.
Correct. Yes.
That's tenant friendly. Like I
We
don't
need to
know.
do another podcast episode about that.
Yeah, nothing in New York, that's for sure. It's I
No,
sold everything here.
I sold
But
off
yeah,
everything in California as well.
yeah, it just you want to have that, so that's an income. Like people always need housing, right? They always need rent. And if you're in a state where they don't pay the rent, they're out in 30 days. Listen, it's a business. You know,
That's right.
we're not running, I have a charity. It's one thing we do, but that's real estate landlord is not a charity.
Not the charity. It is not a not for profit
Right.
endeavor.
Not a 501(c)(3). Right. So yeah, I mean, that's one income stream. We have the virtual assistant business. So that one's another one. That's a very good income stream. It's been so for a while. We have our, the real estate. And I would say that the being a landlord when you have a management company, yeah, it's pretty passive. I spend maybe about a total of about 40 hours a year, sometimes more, depending on if I have to fly down there quite a few times just to supervise the renovations. But the virtual business, that one's pretty hands off. My partner takes care of almost everything. I just do the bookkeeping and cutting checks. So that one's been great. And, we have another one with the AI business. That one's, gone through ups and downs. And, we're getting that back up. And we built a couple of great tools for that.
Right.
And we have the real estate is the main bread and butter, and that one's one where we're an active business. It's kind of being pretty much self-employed. It's on
Yeah.
the quadrant. It's not a hands-off business. When you try to be hands-off as a real estate agent, I mean, we're running a team. It's very tough. Very
Tough
tough.
endeavor.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I would say that that one's tough. And then, we have some of the ancillary businesses. One of the things is a lot of things tie in. And one of the things I learned at Keller was, you know what? We're in an industry, build other ancillary businesses that can
Yes.
go along with your transactions. So we do have an ancillary with title, with lending, which tie into everything. And that just helps grow. Like I know a couple of Keller OPs down in Florida where they flat out own their entire title agency.
Yes.
And that's a big revenue stream. I know a couple of agents in Michigan, and they run one of the biggest agents in Michigan runs their team as a loss leader for the title
Yeah. I
and
also, not
lending.
in Michigan, but I also know people that do that. Yes.
So it's and you can do that. So there's definitely a lot of things you could do, and I think that if you have the right coach and you have the right people around you, you can broaden your horizons where it's like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. And
I'm actually helping a few people do that. So they came to me as new clients and they said, we actually want to hire you to assist us in launching some ancillary business. And we analyzed their sales first because I wanted to make sure that was solid. So we made sure they had at least the number was 18%. I'm not going to explain why, but we made sure they had 18% growth year over year with no more than two exceptions in the past 10 years. And they did. Yeah, they met that criteria. I was like, great. So they actually hired me so they could launch an independent staging company because they realized what they were already doing at their listings. So we did, that entire thing. They did get into a title joint venture. One of the other ones wanted to get into lending because that was something in their state that would, um, and staging. So it's very funny. It's that is something that is viable and it can be profitable. And I may be biased, but I highly recommend that you get assistance while you're launching it to make it smooth in
yeah,
the beginning.
100%. I agree
So
with
when
you.
you look now, so share with everyone, if you don't mind, how many kids do you have now?
Three, three kids. Yeah, I have my
Very
oldest
good.
is turning 16 now. So yeah,
Oh my gosh. And thriving, just the family, you're in
yeah. I
the
I think I'm
outer boroughs and Long Island. I always call you New York City. What I tell people, if you have anything, just New York City,
yeah.
give them a call.
Yeah, I think that I've been very fortunate that, I think one of the biggest things is having the right partner. And I think that my wife has been very supportive throughout the process. She graduated Rutgers University, and let's just say she didn't say, "Oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur," or married to one. And but I think that the life that being an entrepreneur affords you is just one that when you work for a company, you just can't do. Like my wife she worked at Bank of America after Merrill Lynch. She was glued to her phone, the BlackBerry,
Yep.
and when that was a thing,
Yes.
um, and now we're not. We were just looking. She had a memory pop up on her phone. It's been 4 years since she's stopped working. And I mean, last year we did a tour of the Great Lakes road trip. We went up
It's
to
amazing.
Canada, started there, and those memories. You can't buy those memories, and that time that this being an entrepreneur affords you. It's this year we went to Japan and Hong Kong for a little bit over 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and we were planning a big road trip to the national parks this year, but a couple of other factors kind of put that one on hold for a while. But we're gonna do a cruise at the end of the year for like a week and a half, and we're gonna hit the Keys. It's You can't get that much time off at a company.
You cannot.
Yeah,
Right.
you
Well,
just
and
can't
even the
do it.
postponed
You know?
trip, if you had put in like for time off for that trip to the national parks and then you canceled it, they might not have let you change. Yeah. You have the freedom to do that.
Yeah, you have the freedom, and not
Well,
only that, the amount of money that as an employee, I think right now what a year like 16, maybe 17,000, you can put in your 401k, and then you can have company match. But when you are the employer and you are the employee, I mean, you get supercharged that and start
Absolutely.
doing that to build wealth and to invest in, real estate. I mean, there's just so much. You could start a business like I did back in 2005 with your retirement money. I mean,
That's
depending on
right.
your age, I wouldn't like if you were in your 40s, I probably wouldn't go all in on it. I'd use some of it. Now real estate, yeah, you can go ahead and use pretty much all of it. And you could use that. And people don't understand the fact that the multiplying effect, right? That you can take if you went in and like I did this in South
It's
Carolina.
remarkable.
I went in and I bought a property all cash. So I had no competition, right? I was buying a building all cash, an 8 unit building, and then I cash out refied that building and went and bought another building all cash, right? So
It's amazing.
and I could keep doing that, right? If there was other opportunities, um, until you pretty much have built up a lot. And people don't realize that you can do that. And the best part of it is if you do that with your retirement account, you're not paying taxes on anything.
Correct. Yes.
You
There's
don't
so
own it.
much to learn. There is so much to learn in terms of what you can do and how you can structure things. And it's not reserved just for the people that are already wealthy. Like, if any of that conversation was kind of like, what's he talking about? You got to reach out. That is definitely, there's so much out there that you can do.
100%.
Well, I know that you and I could probably continue talking about this for hours, but we will wrap up. And I want to thank you for just being vulnerable and sharing this and sharing how that fear of failure and that drive and commitment that you were going to take the gift from your parents and you were going to multiply it by 10. You were just going to like make that embodiment of that dream they had for you and your wife and your children. If anyone wants to reach out to you, all of your contact information is going to be in the description. If someone is only listening on audio only, what is your favorite platform where they could reach out to you?
I mean, you can reach out to me on either Facebook or Instagram. At
Perfect.
Instagram at Marco Gomez Realtor. It's very
There you go.
easy.
Super easy. And thank you so much. I hope you'll come back again. And again, just thank you for sharing. I hope you'll come to the next episode of The Inner Estate. And thank you, Marco.
Thanks, Bridget.
All right.